Hello, hello, hello. Hey, world, can you hear me? Welcome back. I'm just today I wanted to do some stuff, but I my day is already kind of ruined from the late schedule. So I just thought I will do something different. I want to talk about 3D models today a little bit and just give you a very quick example of like what I do. But I actually don't have any samples to show you. I'm going to show you other people's samples and say if it's good or bad in my opinion. So let's start with this one. Can you actually see that? Yeah. Okay, so this one, I don't know, by the way, the artists here, I don't know who made that. But okay, so I know this background. I remember it vaguely. I don't know what it's called, but yeah. Anyway, here the main problem is it's way too dark. And it's not just that, it's kind of the lack of proper lights used. There are different lights you can use, and they, just like in real life, and they have different impacts, of course. And obviously, like this one, I see like one light source kind of coming from the side, but that's pretty much it. And that's not enough because there's nothing on the character. And in reality, if you are in that kind of park or whatever, in real life, light kind of it's not just from one. I mean, yeah, the source can be the sun, for example, but once it reaches surfaces on the Earth, as long as it's not pure black, because black just absorbs everything. But here it's like green or stuff like that, and green reflects color. So what happens is that the rays come in and then basically they start to kind of bounce around all over the place. So even here in this scene, the actress should be much more lit than she is, and that's just not the case here. The pose itself, like, by the way, the rest is like okay, but in photography, well, I mean, that's photography though. So it's not really the same as digital art, although I would argue that certain rules do apply. You have the rule of thirds in photography. So basically, you take your screen, you divide it by three, and the top line, that's where the eyes should be. Okay, so that's basically, even in DAS Studio, actually, in the preview window, you can enable the thirds guides. And that's why they put them in there. It's because, yeah, it's related to photography and related to proper composition of the image. So, of course, you're free to do anything you want. Look, that's just a rule. It's not the rule, okay? So, but anyway, yeah. So this one, enough of this one. Let's move to the next one. Let's go to this one first. Okay. Just let me resize it so that it fits into my screen here. Okay, there we go. You can see that, right? So this one, different artist, different background. So I believe here, I'm pretty sure anyway, that the background is actually a real image. But the model obviously is the 3D character. And the problem here is that this is not the worst example, by the way, but she stands out from the background like in an unnatural way. Now, obviously, you know, this will happen when you mix a real life image with a 3D character. And here, the recommendation I will give is just if you look at just look at your hand, like just look at the middle finger, for example, focus on it, right? You'll notice that everything kind of to the sides of your focus is not exactly clear. Like the edges become a bit blurry, and that's the thing. Like I'm still trying to figure out exactly what is the difference between, like, a real photo and a picture of a 3D character in there. Like, what do you have to do to make it blend better? I don't know the answer yet. I'm still looking. I've been looking for years. Like I said, there are certain hints here and there. Like, for example, yeah, the way that not the whole thing is in focus, that certain edges would be a bit blurry. Certainly that helps, but that's not all. Okay, that's not all. So you'll have to look more into how to do that. But one advice I give here, if you want to mix real life images with 3D characters, of course it's possible, it's doable. But my advice is to actually use like filters. There are a lot of filters out there. I'm not talking about what do you call them? Like Lightroom filters. That's different. That's just for coloring your image. I'm talking about kind of AI inspired filters, the ones that really modify your image in a way. Now, if you use that, both your background and your character will, the filter will apply to both, and it will actually blend the image much better. So again, there is a bunch of filters out there. It's up to you to experiment which one you want. But in my experience, that is the best way to actually mix the two together. Now, if anybody knows better ways, please let me know in the comments, of course. But yeah, I'm not claiming to have ultimate knowledge, I'm quite limited still. All right, let's look at this one. Don't save. Resize. Ooh, this one's a bit bigger, maybe 60. Okay. So this one, the issues I have with this one is it's just a bit boring. Like, it's very flat looking. There's almost no contrast. And look, I know that probably like a lot of these people, by the way, they just make pictures for fun. Okay, so this is not for sale or anything like that, and that's fine, and that's a different category then, because I sell my work, and obviously then I have to make it much better than this. The problem I have with this, yeah, it's very flat. There's almost no contrast. Obviously, they're going for a real room kind of lighting situation, but the thing is, like in real life, there are very few places where like indoor lighting is interesting, let's say. Most of the time it's just boring, it's plain, it's just to kind of light the whole room, and that's it, So yeah, but you are in a 3D graphics program. You don't need to replicate this kind of boring, plain look of a real room. You can play around with lights. You can give them different gels. Maybe you can angle them differently. You can do a bunch of stuff. Like just make your image more interesting. And finally, the last comment here I will say, and this is actually, I still suck at it myself, to be honest. But there is a way apparently to make the model interact more with, for example, here it's a couch. There's a way to kind of indent her into the couch so it looks more natural. It looks like she's actually sitting there and not just almost kind of floating on its surface. So, like I said, for me, that's still kind of new. I just started looking into that. I didn't have a chance yet to experiment with it. But definitely, if I have an opportunity, I will look into that, because it just makes the thing more realistic. And of course, the other thing you have to consider then is the ass, okay? Because the way that the ass will form itself when it's sitting is different from when it's standing up, okay? So you have to use morphs basically to make it adjust to the seat or whatever. Like, it just makes it more realistic. So DAZ Studio has a bunch of morphs you can buy. Some of them are free, but most of them you have to buy. And they cover a lot of situations like breasts, the butt, legs, thighs, feet, etc., etc., etc. This is up to you, because it's up to you how much realism you want to get out of it. And I mean, what you want to get out of it in the first place. I mean, do you want it to be realistic, or do you just do it for fun, right? All right, let's look at the next one. Let's go to this one first. Okay, this one is huge, I think. Yeah. All right, resize. That's good. This one is a background. I think I know this background as well. I think I've seen it before. And yeah, the background is okay. I like the way that it's blurred, but there's a problem here. If you look at the picture, they they blurred the entire background, even the part which is pretty close to that futuristic motorcycle or whatever. And again, this is unfortunately not how the real world is. It's not just like you have one object in focus and then everything else is out of focus. It actually depends on the length and the distance from the camera. So if that piece of land is at the same distance as the motorbike, then it should be more in focus, or actually in focus. That's the thing. So when you play with focus, you have to be very, very careful. In that case, what I do, I will I will not use the depth of fields in DAZ because again, that's very kind of tricky. I will use probably something in Photoshop where I will create different masks with different blurs. So for example, if it's far away, let's say it's blur 50, right? But if it's a bit closer, then it's blur 20. And then you kind of blend them in, you feather them in, and it looks just fine actually. So yeah, this is to avoid this kind of general um, defocus that you're doing. Defocusing is fine. It's a depth of field thing, but you have to be careful how to use it. As far as the model is concerned, I think it's okay. The I don't know. It's just okay, but the light is not fantastic for me. Like it could have been better. I wonder if it's I wonder if this one is too well lit, if you know what I mean. I wonder if maybe something a bit more contrasted would have done the trick. I don't know. But anyway, that's it for this one. All right, let's look at the next one. This one here. It's only two more. Don't save. Resize. Okay, so this one actually, this is a pretty complex scene because there's a lot of characters here. There's like at least like maybe 10 of them or something. There's some action going on. The guy in the middle was shot to the neck by an arrow. I don't know why he's not wearing a helmet though. Okay, the guy nearest to us also doesn't wear a helmet for some reason. Um, if they can afford armor for the horses and most of them can afford the armor and the helmets, why couldn't these two afford the helmet? It's just kind of weird. But anyway, this is a pretty complex scene. I don't know what the background here is. The background, I think, like here, it's. I'm not sure about the focus. I think it's okay. I think it's all right, but I'm not exactly sure. The issue I have here is the background itself. I think it's not fantastic. I think that the mountains look a bit not great. Like you could have done better. Yeah. What are you doing? The background could have been better. Um, the I don't know. Like it's okay for me. Like it's a complicated scene in terms of characters. Um, but just the background for me is not amazing, and it kind of takes points off as far as I'm concerned. Could have been a better background, then it would be okay. But the dust itself is fine, yeah, absolutely fine. And then finally, the last one I want to show you is this one. So this one, I kept it for last because, okay, this is an example of an actually a good one, in my opinion. So here you have very good lighting, you have a good mood. I like the way that, yeah, it's very well edited, I have to say. Um, it might be a filter, I don't know, but it's well edited. The lighting is good. Like there's a strong source, obviously coming from the side, and it's very strong on the mask and the face. But if you see, like, kind of the torso part has already less lighting, and this is an example of a good work because yeah, lighting is tricky. good lighting is very tricky. So the way that it falls off is very kind of interesting. Anyway, this is an example of a good one. Very easy is to use a pose. Any pose you want, really. I mean, it has to fit the scene, obviously, but there needs to be some kind of pose, okay? But if you don't, let's say you just have a plain person standing there, the arms should probably be down, actually. Let me try to erase that. Look, Ma, no arms. Just kidding. Oh, it's thinner now. All right, well, you get the idea anyway. Okay, so let's say, yeah, just standing around, arms kind of down. The one thing you have to understand first about the scene that you're doing is the lighting. So in DAZ Studio, the way it works is that if you get an environment, it often has lights attached to it already. So this is normal because it can be some kind of, I don't know, some futuristic scene with some LED flat screen in, panel or something, and obviously that creates light, and it will shine down on the scene, or it will have other like light bulbs, etc., etc., etc. All of that creating light sources already. So what you have to do is you have to match your character to the scene. But let's make it easy here. Let's say that the source is just coming from the side, like from the upper side. So let's mark it in red. Let's say the source comes from here. Now, usually, if you don't have any lighting applied whatsoever, the character is just going to look plain. So the light will be evenly spread throughout the character, and that's not what you want, obviously. Now, of course, if you're just doing a render for fun, it's okay. But if you're serious, you have to understand certain things. And the obvious thing to do here is, okay, so if the light comes from here, then, you have to kind of at least visually divide your character. Let's use a green here. Still thick here, okay? So you have to divide your character kind of like this, and then probably bending a little bit, because you have to, light comes at an angle, you see? So the counter angle also has to be a curve, basically. And all of this here, all of this area here will be darker if the light only comes from that one place. Okay, that's important here. And then you have to use, well, in Photoshop, you can just make a layer, and you can, draw a mask, and you can just make everything here a bit darker, and then make sure you feather the curve itself so that it doesn't like create this very strong difference, that it's very nice and smooth. It's very simple, actually. It's basic. And already, if you do that, just this alone, you already have more realism in the scene. But let's say you have multiple sources of light. So actually, the way that I work is that I work in a kind of 3D, not 3D, but a 3-point light system. So what it means is that, yeah, there is a light coming from there. There is a light coming from there. Yes. And then this arrow is actually not really correct. Let me try to redraw that. Okay. So, yeah, there is one light coming from kind of over here. One light, this blue light, is from the back. So I'm just going to write here. It's a backlight. And then the third one, let's use, I don't know. Well, let's use orange because it's still a frontal one. It just comes from here. If you make a movie, like the standard lighting technique is you have three lights. I mean, that's basic, okay? Of course, I know that in in many movies they use a lot more lights, and it depends on what you want. But if you're like cheap like me, I don't have a lot of money, I don't have a big budget for my films, so I have to use a 3-point light system. And it just means that you place one light on each side of the character. Sometimes you have a fill light, but it's not really necessary, but you can have it if you want. And then the backlight. So the backlight, I don't know, it depends on which shoulder you want it, but it just creates, it separates the subject from the background if you want. It creates this kind of distance there. It shows that there is depth in your image. Now, 3D digital art or whatever, I think it works the same way. Basically, yeah, you're trying to create depth between objects so that the image doesn't look flat and boring. So yeah, I recommend using a 3-point light system. There are certain lights you can buy in the store, which already come in, it already comes as a set, so you don't need to fiddle around with it too much. But the problem with it is, I find, is sometimes the lights are put very far away. So obviously you have to adjust the light in DAZ. The way I do it is in the DAZ studio, you can, when you pick your cameras, right, from the menu, you can also choose your lights. And if you do that, you can then manipulate the X, Y, Z axis of the light. So instead of doing it by eye, okay, and trying to do it like in a weird way, just use it this way. Go to the light, change the parameters, and then you know exactly where it is. You can just like point it at the character. So you repeat that, just bring them closer. Depending on the scene though, if it's a big scene, if it's a wide scene, then maybe they do deserve to be a bit out there. But if it's a small scene, just bring them closer. But obviously, as you bring them closer, they're going to be very, very bright. So you have to reduce the intensity, and you most likely have to change the color gels as well, because they're not like suitable usually. By default, I think they're blue in my case, and that's not very good. So yeah, I just typically put them to white. But again, it depends what you want. If you want a color gel, then put it on the color basically. The backlight is the same. Backlight is almost always blue, and again, if you don't want that, just change the color. And also, you do have to move it closer. Okay, so yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. I hope I explained a bit about what is good, what is bad. Obviously, look, this is just kind of the very basic breakdown of things. There is much more to know. Even programs like DAZ or even Poser. I think, in my opinion, Poser is like one of the most primitive ones these days. DAZ is a bit more advanced. But if you do know Poser, you know DAZ, because it's very, very similar in the way that you use them. I started from Poser, and then I moved to DAZ because, yeah, look, I mean, it was really funny. I thought back then when I was doing Poser stuff, I thought, oh wow, this looks freaking amazing. And then literally like the first render I did in DAZ just blew my mind, and I was like, okay, yeah, Poser, you're done. That's it. I'm done with Poser. So yeah, DAZ Studio, yeah, definitely great. And it's up to you to make the scene. I mean, it depends what you do again. If you're just doing it for fun, okay. But if you're doing it for sale, for posters, for some people use it for book covers. I mean, I would like to do that at some point maybe. Then you need to have very high quality in your images. Yeah, you can use Photoshop later, that's true. But I wouldn't rely on Photoshop. I would try to do as much as possible within DAZ. All right, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching, and if you want more of these, let me know in the comments. But I literally just had nothing to do today, so I'm like, hey, why not do a video on DAZ? All right, that's it. Stay safe, take care, and JC signing off.